Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering Jacksonville Jaguars for OnSI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to move forward through yet another offseason together. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today we are talking about why I believe the Jacksonville Jaguars 2025 draft class is even more important than the one they have coming in this year, 2026. And I'd like to preface that by saying I'm in no way taking away from how important this draft is for the Jaguars. It's massive. 11 picks, 4 in the top 100. You can find impact players on day 3. You know, if they scout right, if they develop right, they just find the right fits. The draft is kind of a crapshoot. So, you just throw the right dart and hit the right spot on the board. I mean, it was a late round compensatory pick that got the Rams Puka Nacua. So you never know what these picks can become. Giving yourself more at-bats is normally a good idea as a result. And the Jaguars have a lot of at-bats this year. So there's reason to believe that, this Jaguars draft class, even without having a first-round pick due to the Travis Hunter trade, does give the Jaguars, some bandwidth to make an impact. Now, with that in mind, I think looking beyond however the Jaguars use those 11 picks to fill holes, I personally believe that, they should use quite a bit of those picks on the defensive side of the ball, specifically along the front 7. But no matter how they do end up using them, I am going to be of the belief that the 2025 draft class, so second-year guys, will be still the most important draft class of the Gladstone-Cohen regime. Now, a lot of times, the first draft class of the regime is the most important. But this is a regime that, they already had their quarterback, so you're not going to draft a quarterback, have that be an important draft. They made their big swing, obviously, with Travis Hunter. But that, just because they traded a first-round pick for Travis Hunter, I'm not even including that. For me, what I'm including when I talk about Travis Hunter is the fact that the Jaguars have a lot riding on him on the field entering his second season. In a lot of ways, the Jaguars who have only added Chris Rodriguez Jr. this offseason, Travis Hunter can be seen as their biggest offseason addition because they only got him for 7 games last year, not even half the season. Now, if all goes well, they obviously will get him for a much more expanded time beyond that as he enters his second year with the franchise. Former number 2 overall pick was used last year more on offense at wide receiver than on defense at corner, had twice as many snaps on offense as he did on defense. It's looking like that ratio, very well may and should flip this season. The Jaguars have said that, just because of where their needs are, what the roster looks like, he's expected to play a bigger role on defense this season now. They haven't said anything beyond that, what that ratio looks like, what even a bigger role, how they define it, how they're going to use him on offense. But it's pretty clear they need him more as their number 1 starting cornerback right now than anything else. He'll still, I think, obviously get times where he'll be utilized and even focused on offense. But if he becomes the number 1 corner in a shutdown corner that the Jaguars believe he is, they start recouping value immediately from that trade, and he becomes immensely important. I believed coming out of school he was better as a corner and projected closer to being an all-pro type of talent there on that receiver. Not to take anything away from what he does at receiver. You saw against the 49ers, you saw against the Rams, and you saw against the Chiefs what he can do at wide receiver. Now, he can make big plays, obviously. I think, though, that just because of their needs on defense and because of the value that we've seen in shutdown corners, he can do even more for the Jaguars this year at corner than he could have done at receiver last year, even with a full season. So I think the Jaguars have plenty riding on Travis Hunter. And they need him in a very real way to pan out, at least defensively. I said when they drafted him that he was kind of obviously an aggressive move, but a safe pick because odds seemed hard that he wouldn't thrive at least one of the two positions. And I'm not even saying the book is closed on him thriving as a receiver. I think if he's solely focused on receiver, he'd be an exceptional one. But I do think if you had to prioritize one right now, and one to, I think, not even just make it his top focus, but at least get more of a rhythm at, because he wasn't able to do that last year. Even I think at receiver, it's hard to get into a rhythm because, we saw in the first two games last year, 2 times he was open for probably a touchdown and play that ends up in a pick. At corner, he's at least contributing in some way, even if the ball is not going his direction. So I think the Jaguars have a ton riding on him just in their defense's long-term vision, but especially next year because cornerback was one of those positions, you can argue, cost them the Buffalo Bills game. And they obviously moved on from Greg Newsome, let him walk in free agency. So Travis Hunter will be immensely important. And then that doesn't even mention their third-round picks. Caleb Ransaw and Wyatt Milam picked with back-to-back picks at 88 and 89. Caleb Ransaw, has a foot injury in training camp, isn't able to play the rest of the season. So essentially gets a redshirt year. So while Hunter at least got 7 games, they didn't get anything out of Ransaw last season because of the injury. Now he's obviously being prepared, in my opinion, for a more important role than maybe he would have even had last year. And I'm not even saying he's going to start. I think there's a real chance he starts the year as the third safety and then becomes a starter at some point. But just with his upside alone, if they hit on him, that's a big addition to the secondary. If they hit on both, the secondary gets 2 really young, talented athletes on cheap contracts who can make a big impact. That'd be absolutely massive. Beyond Ransaw, Milam, drafted last year, battles injury in training camp when it looked like he was starting to pick up momentum, and the Jaguars go with Ezra Cleveland and Patrick McCarry at their starting guard spots. Milam ended the year basically as their 6th lineman, in jumbo packages, but he never really had a big role. There was only one game where he really played extended snaps, and I think coming into this season, if there are any injuries, and even to push guys, even to push Cleveland perhaps, even to push McCarry, the Jaguars need Milam to take a step forward. The Jaguars need to see some growth despite him maybe not getting thrown into the fire as much last season. Bayshal Tootin, this one's obvious. The Jaguars let Travis Etienne walk, and while they did add a guy in Chris Rodriguez Jr., I think it's pretty clear that they're going to more of a true running back by committee. And I don't consider last year them being running back by committee. I know they had 3 running backs play significant roles. I know Tootin was basically the goal line back and, really got some vulture touchdowns out of it. But I think Etienne was pretty clearly the lead back last year. I think this time around, it will be much more of a concentrated committee effort. And then 7th rounder, LaQuinn Allen from the same draft. He was their mostly third down, passing down running back last year because he was so gifted as a pass protector. The biggest thing I think they're losing with Etienne is a weapon in the passing game as a pass catcher. Can Allen take a step forward there? And then linebackers, 4th rounder, Jack Kaiser, 6th rounder, Jalen McLeod. The depth that they provide at linebacker, McLeod behind Dennis Gardeck, Kaiser behind Foye Oluokun. Very real chance that they could need each of those guys to be starters, if not in 2027, then in 2028. So there's a lot of development going on with this class, and I didn't even mention Jonah Monheim or Rayon Lane. And a lot of reasons why I think this is a very important draft class for the Jaguars to get some production out of this season.